Hello, and welcome to Thought for the Week. We're continuing in our series on the names of God. And for the next 2 weeks, we'll have a Christmas-themed Thought for the Week on the names of God. This week, we're looking at Jehovah Raah. Jehovah Raah, which is the Lord is my shepherd. Instantly, as I say that, your brain goes to Psalm 23, and that is where we see this phrase, the Lord is my shepherd, for the first time. And it's at the very beginning of the psalm, obviously, the Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want, or as some versions say, I have no lack. I'm not going to read it this morning together, but if you want to go back and look at the psalm, I highly recommend it after we've kind of talked about the context of it. So we think of the Lord as my shepherd, we think of Psalm 23, we think that that's something that David comes up with, but actually calling God shepherd, the kings of Israel were actually often called shepherds. So we see this all throughout the Old Testament. We see God being called the shepherd of Israel many times in the Old Testament. But we also see that in the ancient Near East, this was a common term for kings. Kings were called shepherds. So this wasn't something that David invented in the Psalms. This is actually something that was in the vernacular of the time. And it was another word for king. That person was a shepherd over their people. A king was a shepherd over their people. So we see David saying this. And what I love about this psalm is that we often think the Lord is my shepherd, and our emphasis is on shepherd. Like, as opposed to the Lord is my taxi driver, or the Lord is my dry cleaner. The Lord is my shepherd. But David's emphasis would have been on the words the Lord, not shepherd. Because what David is saying is the Lord is my king, my shepherd, my lead. As opposed to all of these other things that I could be led by, it's actually the Lord who is leading me. And those two words, many commentaries say that those two words are the most important part of the whole psalm. Because what comes after those two words is David explaining what it looks like when the Lord, versus other things, is king of your life or is your shepherd. What does life look like when you are led by the Lord, specifically by Yahweh? What does that unfold? And that's what the rest of that psalm is about. I found a really funny version of this, which is if we are sort of the king's the shepherd of our own lives, what that might look like. And someone's rewritten the words of Psalm 23, so I want to read it to you. It says, I am my own shepherd. I am always in need. I stumble from mall to mall and shrink to shrink, seeking relief but never finding it. I creep through the valley of the shadow of death and fall apart. I fear everything, from pesticides to power lines, and I'm starting to act like my mother. I go down to the weekly staff meeting and I'm surrounded by enemies. I go home and even my goldfish scowls at me. I now anoint my headache with extra strength Tylenol. My Jack Daniels runneth over. Surely misery and misfortune will follow me, and I will live in self-doubt for the rest of my lonely life. Well, obviously this is not a good version, and the author's obviously poking fun at what we do when we are leading our own lives. But I want us to think about that question. We're in the season of Advent. We're in the season of waiting, as the churches around the world, waiting for the coming of the Christ child, the coming of the King, of the one who we would allow to be our shepherd, who we would follow, and who's coming into the world to offer that, to offer himself as the shepherd, and actually as the good shepherd. So another time where we see Jesus referring to himself as shepherd is in John 10, when he announces, I am the good shepherd. Again, we think of that as the first time maybe that we think about God as our shepherd. Jesus was announcing this, but this would have been revolutionary for him to have said in his time period. Because if we go back to Ezekiel 34 is talking about the kings of Israel as shepherds. And he's saying that they're bad shepherds. They're not taking care of their people. In fact, they are using their power unjustly. But in Ezekiel 34, it begins to talk about the fact that a good shepherd will come. So when Jesus stands up in John 10 and says, I am the good shepherd, what he's saying is, I am the one you've been waiting for. You are the bad shepherds. You had bad leaders. I am the good shepherd. And life with me will have no lack, as David says. And I always thought when I was a kid, it says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. And I always thought, oh, the sheep are tired. That's why they're laying down. And we're often called sheep in the Bible. Many, many passages where the people of God are called sheep, sometimes for good, sometimes for ill. But here it's saying, he makes me lie down in green pastures. And what that means is I can rest in him. A sheep doesn't normally lie down unless it has been fed and it's not afraid of what's going on around it. It's not afraid of enemies or being attacked. It's a vulnerable position as a sheep to lay down. And so to lay down in green pastures means that we feel satisfied, that God is protecting us. It's resting in him. And that's what I want to encourage us in Advent, in this busy season of Christmas with shopping and traveling. I want to encourage us to rest in the Lord. Can we rest in our good shepherd, our King who has come? Even as we sing Christmas carols and we sing, "Oh, come, let us adore him. Come and behold him, born the King of angels." Or my personal favorite, "Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King." Can we rest in him? 1 Peter says, "For you were like sheep going astray, but now you have returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls." That's my prayer for you and for me this Advent, that we could learn to return to the shepherd and the overseer of our souls, to rest in him, knowing that even if we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he is with us. His rod and his staff, they comfort us. Surely goodness and mercy will follow us all the days of our lives. So many blessings on your Advent season, and we'll see you next week for another Name of God.